All right. We are going to call this meeting to order. However, before we start the meeting, I think that everybody is aware that today was the funeral of Mr. George Floyd. So we will have a few moments of silence in remembrance to him and to the work of activism and change that we need to have in our country in his honor. Thank you. With that, we now proceed to the invocation. If Councilman Dobler could please introduce the invocation to be followed by the Pledge of Allegiance.
Thank you, Mayor. Pleased tonight to have Pastor Dale Greer. Dale has been the minister at the Town and Country Christian Church for 20 years. Dale grew up in Wichita, but has lived in Topeka most of his adult life. He's been married for 39 years, has 2 children and 6 grandchildren. 2 of those grandchildren live in Topeka. Town and Country Christian Church at 29th and Fairlawn is involved in our community with harvesters, prison ministry, retirement home ministries, helping with the rescue mission, and many other forms of outreach. Dale notes that he and his wife love their church and the people of this city. They are proud to be part of the community. Pastor Greer.
Well, let's pray. Our gracious God, I thank you for your presence, especially your presence right now in this place. I ask you to bless this group, and I ask you to give them wisdom as they make decisions for this city. I ask you to give all of us just clear heads and caring hearts. Help us, God, to see each individual as someone that you've created. Help us, God, to just be the kind of people you need us to be. Again, give us wisdom and give us understanding for one another and understanding of your will. I pray this through your loving Son. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We now proceed to the roll call.
Mayor De La Isla,
Here.
Council Members Hiller,
Here.
Valdivia Acla,
Here.
Ortiz,
Here.
Emerson,
Here.
Padilla,
Here.
Nager,
Here.
Dobler,
Here.
Duncan,
Here.
and Lesser.
Here.
We have 10 present.
At this point in time, we move on to the appointments.
A is a board appointment recommending the reappointment of Lorraine Williams to the Topeka Human Relations Commission to fill an expired term ending June 2, 2022. B is a board appointment recommending the reappointment of Thomas Wolkamp to the Board of Building and Fire Appeals for a term ending December 31, 2021. C is a board appointment recommending the appointment of Jennifer Miller to the Topeka Shawnee County Public Library Board of Trustees for a term ending April 30, 2024. And D is a board appointment recommending the reappointment of Veronica Padilla to the Civil Service Commission to fill a vacant position ending June 8, 2024.
We have heard the appointments. At this point in time, what is the pleasure of the body? The mayor does not vote.
Move approval.
Deputy Mayor moves for approval. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second by Councilman Dobler. Comments or questions? Seeing none, we proceed by voting.
Council Members Hiller,
Yes.
Valdivia Acla,
Yes.
Ortiz,
Yes.
Emerson,
Yes.
Padilla,
I will abstain from this vote. Thank you.
Council Members Nager,
Yes.
Dobler,
Yes.
Duncan,
Yes.
and Lesser.
Yes.
All right, we have 8 yes with 1 abstention. The motion passes.
Motion passes. At this point in time, I would like the camera to reflect 2 of our commissioners are there in the audience. We have Ms. Ronnie Padilla and Lorianne Williams. If you could please stand so that we could recognize you. Thank you both so much for your commitment to service and equity in our community. Your efforts do not go unseen, and we appreciate you serving on these boards. Thank you very much. We now move on to the consent agenda, if the clerk would read.
A are minutes of the regular meeting of June 2, 2020, and there's a list of cereal malt beverage applications, and staff is recommending approval.
What is the pleasure of the body?
Move approval.
We have a motion for approval by Councilman Dobler. And it seems like we had a second by Councilman Padilla.
Second, yeah.
At this point in time, do we have any questions with regards to the consent agenda? Seeing none, we proceed by voting.
Mayor De La Isla,
Yes.
Council Members Hiller,
Yes.
Valdivia Akala,
Yes.
Ortiz,
Yes.
Emerson,
Yes.
Padilla,
Yes.
Nager,
Yes.
Dobler,
Yes.
Duncan,
Yes.
and Lesser.
Yes.
We have 10 yes.
10 having voting yes, the motion passes. We now move on to the action items. Item A, if the clerk would read.
A is a resolution introduced by City Manager Brent Trout in accordance with Section 1860010 of the Topeka Municipal Code, approving a conditional use permit to allow for a public utility facility Type 2 sanitary sewer pump station on property zoned R2 Single Family Dwelling District and located at the southeast corner of Northeast Jefferson Street and Northeast Grant Street in the city of Topeka, Shawnee County, Kansas.
City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. Tonight, we are asking for approval of a conditional use permit that will allow the city of Topeka to place a sanitary sewer pump station at this location. Planning and Development Director Bill Finder will provide an overview of the request.
Thank you, Mr. City Manager. Good evening, governing body. Short and sweet, this is a City of Topeka Utilities project that was funded through our CIP. It's come back around for zoning. As you heard, it's going to replace an existing pump station in the North Topeka East neighborhood, built in 1927. It's the design itself will be just south of the current pump station and be a very prideful design to reflect the character of that 1927 architecture of that building, with a outside that has a mortar exterior and roof that mimics and echoes that style. The area will be, actually, the landscaping that goes around the site will be more than is required as a minimum. The fencing will be a black coated vinyl fencing. There will be stormwater on site that will be fenced off. And once the building is constructed, the existing pump station would be removed. There are noise conditions for the CUP. Can't go over a certain decibel. The pump station itself, and I'm sure utilities could get into this a lot more than I can, but we'll have modern odor controls should they need that. There has never been an issue from what we've been told with the existing pump station. But this is a sizable upgrade, a 4,200 square foot building. We did not have any concerns or issues raised by neighbors or the residents. So with that, Planning Commission recommends approval as well as staff. I'll stand for any questions.
Thank you so much, Mr. Fyander. At this point in time, does the body have any questions for Mr. Fyander on this issue? Seeing no questions, I do have to let everybody know that this is a time for us to have any release of ex parte communication prior to the vote. The members of the governing body have to ensure that they disclose that they have had any ex parte communications, which would consider being included the Planning Commission minutes, staff reports, and their attachments, public comments made during the Planning Commission hearing, and similar relevant information to the matter. At the point in time that you have had ex parte communication, you must be able to express the fact that you are able to make a decision that is impartial on this matter. So does anybody at this point in time have an ex parte communication they would like to present?
None.
Seeing none, we then, Councilwoman Ortiz.
I have had support this in an email, and none other than that, none to my recollection. Anything else? Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, seeing none, no additional individuals having to make ex parte communication. I have received the record that we have in file that includes the planning commission. If everybody feels comfortable with voting, and I feel comfortable not being able to make an impartial decision, what is the pleasure of the body?
Move approval.
Deputy Mayor moves for approval. Councilman Lesser seconds. At this point in time, is there any discussion on this item? Seeing no discussion on this item, we proceed by voting.
Mayor De La Isla,
Yes.
Council members Hiller,
Yes.
Valdivia Aquila,
Yes.
Ortiz,
Yes.
Emerson,
Yes.
Padilla,
Yes.
Nager,
Yes.
Dobler,
Yes.
Duncan,
Yes.
and Lesser.
Yes.
We have 10 yes.
Then having voted yes, the motion passes. We now move on to item B, if the clerk would read.
B is a public hearing for the purpose of considering written or oral objections to the proposed assessments on file in the office of the clerk on all lots, parcels, and pieces of ground liable for the cost of improvement, same being street construction for Aquarian Acres subdivision number 9, authorized by resolution of advisability and authorization number 9062, adopted and approved December 4, 2018, and an ordinance introduced by City Manager Brent Trout apportioning and levying a special assessment on certain lots and pieces of ground in the city of Topeka, Shawnee County, Kansas, for improvement project number T601101, Phase 1, to provide street construction for Aquarian Acres sub number 9, adopted and approved on December 4, 2018.
City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. Tonight, the following voluntary special assessment improvement district request is presented for your consideration. The special assessment improvement project, is 100% funded by the improvement district. That is also being done by the developer for the project. The project costs were for street construction. A public hearing is required prior to the consideration of the ordinance.
At this point in time, if there's no questions from the governing body, if there's no questions, we will now open up the public hearing, and therefore any individual that is in desire of speaking on this item did not have to sign up for public comment to do so. So we are requesting any comments to be brought to us in this public hearing. Any individual that would like to speak in this public hearing is welcome to come up to the podium and speak. Any individual that would like to speak to us at this moment on this item can speak to us. Seeing none, the public hearing is now closed. So now we move on to the ordinance, corresponding ordinance. Now that this public hearing has closed, are there questions or comments from the governing body? And if not, what is the pleasure of the body?
Motion to approve.
Councilman Padilla makes the motion to approve. Do we have a second? We have a second by Councilwoman Nager. Comments or questions on this item? Seeing none, we proceed by voting.
Mayor De La Isla,
Yes.
Council members Hiller,
Yes.
Valdivia Aquila,
Yes.
Ortiz,
Yes.
Emerson,
Yes.
Padilla,
Yes.
Nager,
Yes.
Dobler,
Yes.
Duncan,
Yes.
and Lesser.
Yes.
We have 10 yes.
10 having voted yes, the motion passes. We now move on to item C, if the clerk would read.
C is approval of amendment number 1 to the City of Topeka contract number 48038, a joint memorandum of agreement concerning group healthcare cost sharing with the labor unions for 2020 to 2022.
City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. Tonight, governing body, in an effort to assist with the budget expense reduction effects that the city has proposed to amend the healthcare memorandum of agreement that you have before you to allow 2 additional health holidays to be taken this year, in addition to the 2 we normally take in December. The city met with the unions to discuss a potential tentative agreement was reached, and 2 additional health holidays, and as part of that agreement, an additional employee-only contribution holiday was agreed to. The unions have voted in favor of the agreement, and the holidays, though I want to make sure everyone understands, is the holidays will apply to all employees, even though we had to go through the process of gaining union approval to amend this memorandum of an agreement. The health holidays will apply to all employees. So I appreciate the support and the request, though, from the union as they work through this. In addition to the health holidays requirements, it also modifies the number of wellness points that are required in order to receive the 14% premium reduction for insurance. It was reduced from 8 points to 4 points, and that it was decided upon based on the difficulties we have at attending events and conducting events because of the COVID-19 restrictions. So I recommend that this be considered for approval, and I'll stand for any questions.
Questions for City Manager? Councilwoman Nager.
Not a question, but just an expression, thank you, Madam Mayor. An expression of gratitude towards our unions for being flexible, for understanding that the pressure that the city is under in this funding crisis, and just very supportive of this measure and very grateful for their flexibility.
Any other? Councilwoman Ortiz.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It says amendment number 1 to 2020 to 2022, but then in the little memo, it says wellness incentive for 2021. So is this just for the remainder of 2021, or is it just for 2021 or 2022? What's the range on that?
The requirement regarding the wellness incentive applies to the receiving the savings in the year 2021. Now, so in other words, to receive your wellness incentive, it applies to the 2021 insurance. So you have to earn your points, and then it applies to the following year. So that the reduction in points, the reduction in points will only apply to what they need to earn this year in order to be qualified for the following year.
Okay, so it has nothing to do with 2022, right?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Additional comments or questions for City Manager? Seeing none, what is the pleasure of the body?
Move to approve.
We have a motion for approval by Councilwoman Nager.
Second.
We have a second by Councilwoman Hiller. If there is no additional comments, questions, you would proceed by voting.
Mayor De La Isla,
Yes.
Council Members Hiller,
Yes.
Valdivia Acala,
Yes.
Ortiz,
Yes.
Emerson,
Yes.
Padilla,
Yes.
Nager,
Yes.
Dobler,
Yes.
Duncan,
Yes.
and Lesser.
Yes.
We have 10 yes.
And having voted yes, the motion passes. We now move on to the non-action items. Item A, if the clerk would read.
A is an update on the City of Topeka 2020 operating budget.
City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. In our continuing effort to keep a good tab on what's happening with our budget in the year 2020 as we move forward through this economic and revenue shortfall timeframe, we've been updating you as information's provided, and so Jessica Lemondola, our finance director, is here to give a more comprehensive update to what we are seeing right now. We have our final numbers for what happened with our March sales tax collection. So based on the numbers we've received, it's a good timing to provide a little more in-depth commentary. So I'll turn it over to Jessica.
Sure. Good evening. I don't know if I would use the word comprehensive because we're still waiting on a lot of figures, but
More than I think.
more than we had last week.
Yes.
But we wanted to update you as we get information, really focusing on the revenue side. And so the two big items that have changed since the last time we spoke is we got our second distribution of property tax. And as expected, it performed very well to budget. We actually saw, as expected, a growth over the 19 figure. So I think, that's obviously a positive, although property tax tends to be about a year or two delayed when you do have an economic downturn. So for 2020, though, that budget number is quite strong. And then the other important revenue item is sales tax. And as the city manager indicated, we received the March sales tax, which we receive in May. And there was a decline. It's not surprising. Overall, it's a little over 8%. That includes sales tax and use tax. We tracked on sales tax pretty close to the statewide figure. And so why that's important is that the state announced yesterday the statewide figure for sales tax statewide for April. And their decline actually wasn't as big as I would have expected, as most finance people that I've spoken to expected. So we've adjusted the sales tax figure for the city for April. So currently we are anticipating about a 16% decline on the mild side for the month of April, up to a 30% decline on the higher side for the month of April, and that's included on the second page of your memo. You know, again, we don't have any additional insight besides the state numbers. I know for the month of March, some communities saw a huge swing actually up, especially in smaller communities that are closer to a large community, as people seem to be staying closer to home for their basic needs. Whereas other communities that had maybe a larger exposure to luxury items saw a significant decrease that outpaced what the state experienced. So anyways, I'm just giving you a little bit of that context. You know, we're giving it our best effort. We will receive April's number towards the end of June. And so at that point, we'd be able to update you. And then after we get that April number, we'll just continue to monitor what the economic activity looks like for the rest of the year, probably driven a lot by, you know, if we were to see a significant increase in COVID cases, if we were to experience any unexpected events, you know, such as what we've seen in the last week, or if you saw any sort of other types of emergencies, weather-related, that might impact, you know, on the revenue or expense side. But for today's update, it's better than it was a month ago, so that's positive. And then turning to the expense rather than just the revenue, we haven't done a full update on the general fund, but what we have done is really focused on those items we can control. And so that's where the health holidays come into play. And we've detailed those out on page 4 of the memo. There's nothing significantly different than what you've seen previously. But you see the vacancy credit, the hiring freeze estimate, and then the work share program savings estimate. So those two are updated. Overall, at this point, we're expecting to use $1.9 million of reserves on the low impact side, to almost $7.2 million on the high impact. And if we see April come in and it's stronger than expected, or as the months go on and they pick up, if there was a pent-up urge to spend, and we see that in July and August, on the expense side, you know, we can always also adjust. So overall, it's an improvement. More data is needed, and so we'll continue to update you as it's available.
Thank you for your presentation, Jessica. At this point in time, do we have any questions for Ms. Lemondola? Councilwoman Hiller.
Thank you, Mayor. I have one that some citizens have asked me about too, and I know that work on all the personnel stuff is underway, but if you could help us put a little bit of a clarity on the vacancy credit, hiring freeze, and work share program numbers, as well as the discussion, which there's been some press about, on furloughs and for whom it's mandatory and for whom it's optional at this point on furloughs, as well as retirements, and just, I know it's not final, but just kind of how all those pieces are working.
Jessica, why don't you cover the vacancy credit and the hiring freeze as to what you've calculated there, and then I'll ask Jackie to cover more on the work share program.
Sure.
Jessica.
All right, so the vacancy credit is the figure that's included in the city's budget. It's an assumption that you'll have a certain level of vacancy throughout the year, and then we allocate that out to individual departments as a target. And then the hiring freeze are estimates that we expect on top of the vacancy credit. So what this reflects is that payroll through just the full-time line through the last payroll cycle, what we've spent to budget, what we would have expected to spend to budget, and then we project out what the current vacancies equate to for the remaining, I want to say, is it 15 pay cycles left? For the remaining pay cycles, if those were left open. This also assumes, looks at retirements that we know of, especially in some of our uniform departments. So that assumes that. It assumes the potential for an academy in the fall. It assumes the 3 forced layoffs that occurred several weeks ago. So anyway, so it's just taking into account all of those figures to date that we know, and then also projecting out what current vacancies would yield if kept open. Does that make sense?
I think so.
Okay.
If,
Then the work share?
work share, the furloughs and the retirements.
Right. Jackie, if you
The
could,
retirement offer that
Yeah.
also is in addition.
Jackie, if you could cover the work share and the retirement incentive?
Sure. So the work share program is a program that the state of Kansas offers. Since we identified that we needed to do furloughs, we were able to apply for that program and we were approved by the state of Kansas. So about 150 employees will reduce their work hours by 20% over the period from June 15th through September 8th. And by being approved for the state of Kansas work share program, they will be eligible to receive unemployment benefits in the weeks that they have a 20% reduction in their work hours. So that will help offset the pay that they will lose by having to take the 20% equates to 1 day off. And so we are starting that next week. And the non-union employees, except for those in police, fire, and utilities, and a few employees that are funded by grant programs that have some restrictions, will begin reducing their work hours by 20% a week.
Will
Your question, Councilwoman?
will the work share program bring them whole again? Will it cover 100% of the reduction?
It's very individually specific based on each individual's eligibility for unemployment. Some folks may have second employment. There's a lot of variables. It will get them close because of their being CARES Act funding for those that are able to reduce between June 15th and July 25th. If they are eligible for unemployment. So it's a very individually specific determination.
Okay, and again, this is mandatory for all non-union, non-public safety folks.
I'd have to give you a specific list because there are a number of variables, as she mentioned, it relates to. We did not apply it to police and fire management because of some issues related to the way their work schedule is and so forth. Also, with regards to the utilities, with the number of union people compared to the number of non-union people, it made it very difficult related to getting a work group that would then qualify for work share. And so that was not used, and the same is true of the grant-funded positions, taking away those folks, making them the grant specific to that position based on its method of the reason it's paid. So having them not work does not help us in the general fund. There's no way to transfer some grant money now because it became available to cover something else. And so that is why they're excluded as well. So out of 285, about 150 actually fit the bill for being able to be utilized in the work share program.
Thank you.
And Jackie, if you could then cover the retirement incentive that's being offered for employees as we go into 2021 in a general sense?
Sure. So we rolled out this week a retirement incentive, and And that incentive is for those employees that are eligible for a full or partial retirement under KPERS. If they're in KPNF management, they are eligible, but sworn KPNF non-management are not eligible to participate. And we will evaluate if we receive any applications from individuals that are in critical positions. The goal of this retirement incentive is to achieve savings by leaving the position or an equivalent combination of positions vacant for at least 12 months. And the incentive is an extra 15% payout of accrued unused sick leave and retiree-only base health, prescription, and dental provided by the city for 24 months or until the individual reaches age 65 for Medicare eligibility. And those employees that are wanting to take advantage of this incentive will have to have retirement dates between August 7th and September 21st. And that is designed to coincide with the KPERS third and fourth quarters.
The other comment that I'll add is also we've done this and put this out now with the intent that any employees that were eligible for the retirement would notify us within that time frame, so then we would know, based on the number of individuals that may leave our employment, what we need still to do in order to hit our budget target. We will create a budget that shows a number of vacancies that will occur, but if they occur through retirement, that'll allow us to potentially not have to do a forced reduction based on the needs that we have in the budget. So we'll have that information by September and be able to make plans in addition that will help us to start the year 2021 without those employees pulling on our expenses for the next year.
I want to say thank you for that explanation. I know this is a personnel issue, so I don't want to chat about the specifics, but I do want to express concern that if we needed all those folks before, if we're not looking at some specific program things, and maybe you are, I don't want to put the rest of our employees in an impossible position in terms of getting their work done and doing what they need to do. They're great workers and take great pride in what they do, and I just want to make sure that as we go through this process, we're leaving those who remain with manageable workloads and reasonable production expectations.
I understand that, and as we go through and see who might retire, we'll be able to make adjustments to that, but also realize that the amount of change that will need to occur in order to meet that budget target that we have is going to require some tough decisions coming up as to who we continue to have doing what.
I understand, and I also appreciate your thought, which you expressed before, that just adding this little bit of incentive might encourage people who otherwise were delaying retirement to kind of get going, and I appreciate that, and appreciate the report as well. This is great. It's the right length and made sense. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Additional comments or questions? Seeing none, at this point in time, do we have any public comment? Seeing no public comment? Seeing no public comment, we proceed with the announcement.
We have one Mr. Ledbetter's not here, but Mr. Schiffelbein is.
Wonderful.
Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Schiffelbein.
I'm co-chair of Topeka Justice Unity Ministry Project, 25 churches throughout the county, very diverse group, socio-economically, faith-based as well. I'm talking to you tonight regarding a proposed amendment to the Topeka Consolidated Action Plan that was to be considered at the June 16th council meeting. It's now been withdrawn. But when I read it Sunday, these are my comments. This was for $1.6 million of additional, I'm guessing federal funds, for coronavirus, for housing and neighborhood improvements and economic development, as well as social services in the community. And I'll email these things to you folks. The amended cap to be considered for discussion is not satisfactory to our view. Improving the availability of safe and affordable housing for low-income families is neighborhood improvement and economic development. Why can't the governance structure of the city's housing trust fund be used to manage low-interest or even no-interest loans, not grants, to homeowners for home maintenance and repair as suggested as a priority action by the city's housing study, of which I am a member of the steering committee? We have a designated community development financial institution, a local bank, that can assist with managing these loans. It's time to do something dramatically different, something that makes a difference in people's lives. The pandemic and civil unrest over the past 2 weeks lays bare the racial prejudice and injustice in our communities. As we have witnessed both national and local demonstrations and prayer services calling for systemic changes to address injustice, our city has an opportunity to take concrete action to improve safe and affordable housing for low-income families in our community. So here are the questions we had as we read that proposed amendment. When will the cap be finalized? When will the COVID relief money be available and have to be spent? Why hasn't the comprehensive housing study results, of which you have a copy, not helped guide the proposed use of these funds as neighborhood improvement, revitalization, and economic development? What is the amount set aside for business grants? And how will these grant funds be different than other CARES funds that have been provided for the business community? Why not use these funds for home rehab, home remodeling, home renovation? Why wasn't the Momentum 2022 Quality of Place subcommittee not consulted on the use of these additional funds? What was the date for this social media blast for public input into the amended plan for use of these funds available? Did anyone respond to the blast? Apparently none of our 1,400 members who attended our April 28th Nehemiah Action Assembly live stream were aware of that media blast. If I have a little time, those 1.6 million funds, the input was the Homeless Task Force, Shawnee County Health Department, and the Greater Topeka Partnership. $500,000 set aside for homeless. Makes sense. The other 1.1 million was for a mobile testing unit and business grants. Thank you. I stand for questions.
Thank you for your comments. Anybody else signed up for public comment?
No, Mayor.
All right, seeing none, we proceed with announcements. City Clerk.
The June 16 agenda includes several board appointments. We have to the Board of Mechanical Appeals, Topeka Metropolitan Transit Board, Downtown Business Improvement District Advisory Board, and we have one presentation, the 2019 Audit and CAFR Report. Consent agenda has several noise exceptions and special events will be considered. Action items include a resolution of intent for industrial revenue bonds for Midland Connection Incorporated. And then the non-action items are a discussion on the 2020 operating budget.
City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. Two announcements tonight. The first one is that the Topeka Fire Department will be graduating a recruit academy on Thursday. Those new 7 firefighters will be out at the station starting on Saturday, so we're glad to see the additional manpower. Wanted to make sure that people understand that public comment going forward, you can still come to the city hall or to the city council chambers, the governing body chambers, and sign up to speak as long as you do so before 6 p.m., besides being able to sign up by an email request. So please keep that in mind if you're interested. We do have a limited number of seats that individuals can be present in the chambers, but we will rotate people through if there is a large number of public commenters. Basically put them in the hallway and then rotate them through. So that's for information in the future.
At this point in time, I don't have any other comment other than to say that I'm so appreciative that our community continues to express itself. There are 2 more peaceful protests that will occur in our community. I think that one of them is on the 16th, and I was reached out about another one. I think it's going to be on Saturday with a prayer, walking towards Evergy Plaza, and just wanted to make sure that the community was aware. And at this point in time, aside from the fact that, like I said earlier, thank you everybody for having the moment of silence. We now move on to the next person, which would be Councilman Dobler.
Thank you, Mayor. Once again, I'd like to thank Pastor Greer for the invocation tonight. Takes a lot to come downtown at 6 o'clock on a Friday evening just for a couple of minutes. So I think we all appreciate the folks that show up for us to do that. Thank you.
Councilman Duncan.
Oh, my turn. That's right. I guess it comes after 7. Yeah, that's right. Just a reminder to everyone out there that as we've started the process, as you heard a little bit tonight, but we will dig into it over the next several weeks more, the budget process. As I've put out and heard from people, I'm open to any suggestions anyone out there has. I think all of us are, but please send those to us. I always do it with the caveat of, I will listen to anything you have to say and have that conversation, but just telling me to cut or add isn't entirely helpful. If you have specific suggestions we can discuss, I will gladly listen to them, and sometimes that's what the best ideas will maybe not come from the 10 of us plus staff. But so try to give me some specifics, but I'm happy to engage in any of those conversations. I'll also just highlight, I don't know if anyone, this past week, ESPN did a documentary, 30 for 30, on Bruce Lee. That had a Topeka connection, Topeka West alum, Matt Pauley. You go Topeka West, as a proud Charger that I am, but it's always good to see when Topekans have gone out and done something that lots of other people get to see and be a part of and witness, and it's a pretty good documentary on top of that, so he was a producer of that, so just wanted to give a shout out to a fellow Topekan and Topeka West alum for that. Thank you.
Councilman Lesser.
Nothing.
Councilwoman Hiller.
Thank you, Mayor. Just 2 things. One, I want to give a shout out to the people who were here. I'm not sure I knew who they were from behind their masks, but there was a group here this evening with some signs and that just stood up and before they left, and also the people who have been rallying and otherwise advancing the conversations about race and culture here in Topeka steadily in the last few weeks. Those have been productive. New people that haven't been involved have been telling their stories and speaking out. It's important. I encourage everyone to keep those conversations going and also to begin ramping up and getting to know one another so that we can work together as a community to advance the agenda of race and culture in this community. I think we can do it, and I'm in. The other thing I wanted to talk about is just to mention that to congratulate Ms. Tanaya Gibbs and Miss Gianna Gibbs. I'm now Aunt Karen to yet another young person in the world, and it's just a lot of fun. And congratulations, Grandma, for the arrival of your new grandbaby. She's darling, and if people haven't seen her, she looks just like her mom and grandma. Thank you.
Councilwoman Valdivia Alcala.
Thank you, Mayor. Just want to give a shout out to my granddaughter Kennedy, my daughter Ashley. They both have birthdays this past week. Also, just for folks to stay safe tonight because we may be expecting some storms. Also, I too was very cognizant of the young Black folks that came in and held up signs peacefully and silently in the council chambers, and they're gone now, but just wanted to acknowledge that they were seen. and also for rest in peace to George Floyd. I truly believe that his mother was there to meet him in those last 8 minutes of his life. So, thank you.
Grandma.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It's Granny. A while back, the council had got together, and one of their priorities was to help increase the population. And I just want to let everybody know that I did that on Wednesday. So I don't know what the last number was, but it's 1 up. Actually, there was 10 deliveries that night, so it's 10 up. And now if we can just get them to stay. I would just like to thank everybody for their prayers and their well wishes at a crucial time. But everybody's good, and we're moving forward. And I'd also like to thank everyone that are continuing to talk about let's protest peacefully. I think that says a lot about us, who we are, and it doesn't take the focus of what we really need to focus on. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Granny. Deputy Mayor. Councilman Padilla.
Just briefly, I do also want to acknowledge the presence of the people who were here in the audience. We didn't really get a chance to acknowledge them, but being here, being present, and being present for everything that's going on right now is a responsibility of all of us. So I thank them for appearing here, and everyone take care of yourselves. Thank you.
Councilwoman Nager.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. That we continue these conversations about race, about privilege, and about having a more equitable place to live, and that we all continue to respect the fact that we're moving around in a world with a novel virus. So be respectful to those around you, reach out when you can, and stay healthy and safe. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Do you guys mind if I make a quick statement before we wrap up? Because
Madam Mayor, point of privilege
yes.
before you do that. I forgot something, so before you finish this off,
Absolutely, bring it on.
No, just one thing. I forgot to say in my announcement. It's hot out there, and with a lot of the things that have happened in the news, we've missed sort of the traditional cycle of reminding everybody that it's hot, and there are neighbors who have issues with air conditioning or lack air conditioning. In fact, we had someone in my district this week who had one of those issues, and I was glad we were able to get it taken care of, which was, again, a reminder to me. So just look out for your neighbors and those especially who have medical conditions or certain age groups. So it's hot, and be aware of that and help where you can. So thank you for letting me remember that.
Thank you. I wanted to just express a moment of vulnerability with all of you, those of you who are in the audience, and those of you who are in the chamber, and those of you who are at home. Right before this meeting, I ended up having a meeting with Matt Pavarnik, and Matt and I were having a conversation. He just has the most gorgeous, another grandpa now, beautiful, just like chocolate princess in this family that has really, Matt has always been an advocate for inclusion in our community, but we had some really deep conversations, and I had to admit to him that I'm not okay. We live in a beautiful country, and we are extremely privileged. And I think that too often, when we talk about the glory of how our country was established, we forget the fact that in the same breath that we talked in our country about establishing ideas of freedom, there was a boat that stopped to pick up our ancestors, my grandmother specifically, not grandmother, but great-great-grandmother, because of the color of her skin, and brought her here. And not only that, but I think that in this conversation, we often forget our Native American brothers and sisters that were here in this country first. And somehow we forgot that for 200 years, the Black community was brought here against their will for economic issues, to create plantations and to create wealth in our country. And because of those sacrifices, we are one of the richest countries in the world. And I'm sharing that I'm not okay, because I have seen both the most beautiful expressions of solidarity with the communities of color, but at the same time, I have also seen people make posts about the life and the challenges of George Floyd. And I sit there and I watch this and I think, man, if anybody would have judged me when I was homeless, I probably wouldn't be your mayor. I was in the street and my life was not perfect, but it was the grace and the compassion of people that actually cared about me enough to love me when I was completely unlovable that changed my life. And when I see not only in our community, but when I see also in our nation, that it becomes so easy to continue gaslighting people because of the color of their skin and judging people because they make mistakes in our lives, it grieves me. And as your mayor, I have to continue leading with composure. And I was gonna go over tonight and be in the chambers, but to be honest with you, I was having a hard time. So if I'm having a hard time, I can't imagine how hard of a time we're having when we have individuals like Candace Owens speak up and say horrible things about George Floyd and people wanting to feed their confirmation bias and say, look, you see, they're killing themselves. Look, you see, this was wrong. He was gonna be driving and he was gonna be intoxicated on his route to hurt somebody, because as a country, we have normalized these conversations. And what I'm asking everybody right now is, please pause. Don't let yourself be taken in by the confirmation bias that you have been fed about our country. Please pause. Please ask yourself, when was the last lynching in this country? Do you know that it was in the 1980s? Do you know that we talk about socioeconomic challenges, but we forget about redlining? We forget about systems? Do you know that the FLSA was developed so that we could have a minimum wage because of protecting individuals, but yet that minimum wage hasn't caught up with people, and people are still living in poverty even though they're trying to feed their families? Do you know that when Dr. King passed away, one of his speeches, one of my favorite speeches, when he spoke in his letter for Birmingham jail, he was told that we had to wait and that there had to be patience. And as your mayor, I still see things that hurt. I hear conversations that hurt. So I'm gonna ask all of you to check on your people, because we're not okay. And we're trying to be okay, but we're not okay. Be vulnerable. Be vulnerable to hearing maybe some conversations that included microaggressions. Be vulnerable to hearing some of the things that families are living with in our community. Be vulnerable to understand that I'm not justifying looting because it's not. Guess what? People looted our Native Americans and our African Americans that were brought into this country. And it's not right. It's not right. It's not right. It doesn't solve anything and it doesn't build solidarity. I'm not calling for that. What I'm saying is that rather than it being so easy for us to judge, let's keep on having crucial conversations in our community. Check on your people. We're not okay. So to all of you that are watching out there that are struggling, let's not let the gaslighting keep happening. This is real. And I know that you're not okay, because I'm not. So I love you all, and this meeting is adjourned.